Welcome to the Grazing Grass Podcast, episode 23.
The mindset of producing volume to the mindset of producing quality and focusing on customers.
You're listening to the Grazing Grass Podcast, helping grass farmers learn from grass farmers. On today's show, we have Loyd Borntrager. He is a second-generation dairy farmer, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about raw milk sales, one of my favorite breeds of cattle, Dutch belted cows, once a day milking, sprouted fodder. I've seen pictures of in magazines, but I had never talked to anyone who was using it. We also talk a little bit about hogs and pastured rabbits. I think you're going to enjoy today's episode. Before we get to Loyd, be sure to subscribe, share, comment, and review. Let's talk to Loyd. Loyd, we want to welcome you to the Grazing Grass Podcast. We're excited you're here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your operation?
Yeah, sure. Glad to do that. Well, I'm a second generation dairy farmer. I live on the farm where I grew up on here in south central Kansas by the small town of Yoder. It's just a small town, but quite a bit going on there. I grew up here on this farm and lived here all my life and been enjoying it. I went off working for construction a little bit, but all my life I was involved here on the farm. And the farm has transitioned quite a bit from where it started with my dad farming. We were a traditional dairy farm, row crops and grain row crops, pasture on a very small scale. And then most of the feed would all be hauled in for the cows and fed in a building where they would eat all their hay and silage and grain. So that was the way what I was used to when I was a boy. And I was really interested in organics early on. My dad was involved with some fertilizer and feed sales that was a natural fertilizer and feed. And it always interested me, doing something different from the mainstream. That was always it was always my taste to be part of that. And I got involved with different things as I was, growing up. And, Acres magazine was one thing that was really attractive to me. And I asked a lot of questions to other farmers. And anyway, it was it's kind of a long journey, I guess, but it seems like it hasn't been that long ago since we were doing things different. So, I'll just share kind of how we got to where we are today. And we had a dairy farm, and we'd sell a little raw milk to our neighbors and friends and community. My parents did that for all the years I remember, and they had taken over kind of a small business from my mom's parents. So it's been going on a long time, and it was always interesting to me to listen to these customers that would come and purchase this raw milk, and was really a good learning experience for me to just listen to the customers, and it always intrigued me. And they were always so appreciative of the products. Well, we were getting paid less and less on the dairy pricing, and we had this more natural fertilizer, more natural feed that we'd feed the cattle, and it would just kind of pinch a little every time, the price of the feed would go up and the price of the milk would stay the same. And, watching some of the older dairy farmers go out of business, I thought, oh no, is this going to be us too? And after a while, I started looking at the customer thing, and that's where I saw a lot of potential. And I got got married then in 2005, and by that time I was doing a lot of the management. Dad was still involved, but I was kind of slowly taking over the farm, and there was some changes coming along down the pike when I was newly married, and kids were coming along, and I was all excited about this farming endeavor and all the opportunities it gave. And so I kind of was introduced to some of this pasture-based farming through Acres USA, and I remember wanting to be organic and thinking that would be the key to success, because that would be kind of a niche market where we could excel. But we did a lot of tillage and a lot of row crops, and weeds were a big issue, trying to overcome that. And I came across someone, I forget who it was, but there was a quote that really stuck to me, and it was, if you want to be an organic farmer, you need to be a grass farmer first. And that got me to thinking, well, okay, what does that mean on a dairy? Because that's only for beef cows, because the grass is only for beef cows. So anyway, I started checking into that, and pretty soon I started subscribing to the Stockman Grass Farmer, and read had some dairy grazing articles in there that were really attractive. But my dad was not on board here. He said, back in the East, they get more rain. We don't have enough rain to grow good pasture for cows. And so I did keep on pursuing it. And it was kind of a twofold thing when we got to where we are. And that was the customer side of things. People started asking for, is your milk grass fed? And you're like, what does this mean? And when we got asked that, and then the other side was the fields, and the weed side, the organics, and so I was like, this has to work one way or another. We're going to pursue it and go for it. And so the first thing I realized was that turning the cows out on pasture, the first thing was, like a lot of people do out here in Kansas, is they'll turn out their beef cows on winter wheat. So, over the winter and the spring, they'll turn out the cows on the winter wheat. And so we had some wheat and triticale out. And so, we had a little patch that we turned the cows out, and Dad just thought this is the worst thing ever, because, the flavor of the milk will get terrible with that, the spring. Oh, yes. The spring, it's all rich and from the annual, just so lush. So anyway, I did that, and so we just did it for a little bit, and pretty soon I realized that I need more of a sod than just a tilled wheat field, because it didn't have to be very wet, and they just made a mess out of that, because it just we wanted it for a grain crop or a feed crop later, and it just messed it up, and Dad didn't think that ever was the right thing to do. So yeah, we definitely had some of those discussions of the ways of doing things, like I think all farms do. So so I went into the cover crop thing, where I tried to have more living roots in it more of the time, and I quit moldboard plowing. That was a thing back in the day, and did less tillage, and finally I realized that I can keep the cows out a lot longer if I keep keep the tillage away, and that really started making a difference. But it did kind of cut our production a little bit on the pasture side, just simply because it was so used to tillage, and it just didn't have the capacity to get the cycling done, and it just took some time. I realized that, and so I played around with different things on the pasture side. But the biggest thing I saw was that our cows were not made for this. If they had to have energy to go out there and graze, and then come back in twice a day to milk, they ran off a lot of energy, and the dairy cows got a lot of energy going to milk production, and they're milking off their back, and especially when the grass is lush and green, you'll just have big udders and bony cows when they're when they're out like that. So I realized my breed of cows won't work for this either, and so I started searching for some other breed or some other type of cows that would work better for this situation. And I came across this article in a magazine I'd get from, I forget, it was some tractor catalog or tractor newspaper, and there was this dairy farm in Pennsylvania that he had these Dutch belted cows, and the article stated how reproductive they were, and he could have so many heifer calves come along each year that every several years he sold off all his cows, and he had enough heifer calves to start another herd in a year or two, and he was able to take a break. And I thought, this sounds really good. Dairy farmer getting a break. Since when does that happen? But anyway, I did some searching on the breed, and kind of fell in love with them, and so I started searching for a bull, because I realized pretty quickly that I was not going to just buy a new herd just because of the price of those animals.
Yeah.
They're pretty rare, and they were endangered there for a while, and so I decided I would just buy a bull, and a purebred bull, and start crossing them to my Holstein cows. And so that I found a bull actually in Kansas. There was a guy that loaned me his bull and started having cows, and started having calves from these crosses, and really liked them. I never knew a dairy calf could be so energetic, and we thought, wow, these are just great. And yeah, we haven't looked back since. So here we are today with our Dutch belted cows, and we're now in the third and fourth generations away from Holstein. So we're not completely purebred, but we're getting pretty close. And today we're milking once a day, and we're all grass, no grain, and milking year round, and just loving it. Makes for the family life so much better when you're just milking them once a day, and couldn't wish for a difference. Yep.
Yes, very nice. Now, on your Dutch belted, those first calves out of that Dutch belted bull, were they all black and belted at that point?
Well, most of them have a belt when they come out, even at first. So I always told my kids that the spots on the Holsteins all went to the front and the back.
Yes.
But they typically have a wide belt and white feet on that first cross, and then they get a little narrower as they get closer to purebred. But it's pretty dominant on those belts, so we enjoy it.
Yes. Now, you mentioned there you're doing once a day milking, which I grew up on a dairy, 4:30. It didn't matter if it's AM or PM. We were in the dairy barn.
Yep.
So you're milking once a day. How's that working for you? And when did you make that change to once a day?
Well, it's been about 4.5 years now that we've been doing once a day milking, and I was I was inspired by it by another dairy farm in the area that milks seasonal, and that's the way he would do it. And we'd talk about it, and the traditional dairy farmer will say that doesn't work. The cows will never take that. And so I said, I'm going to take this slow. And we were milking twice a day, and morning and evening. And we told ourselves, okay, we're going to be easy on the cows here, and we're going to slowly transition. And so we slowly every time we milked an hour later until we came to the
Oh, yeah.
24 hour. And we did all the math and everything. So we were out part of, it took over a course of 10 days, I think. And there was times we'd be out at midnight milking, and then middle of the day. And so by the time we were done, I told the rest of the family that I think the cows just laughed at us for making it so hard on ourselves, because they did well. They didn't have a problem getting used to it. And so I think the biggest thing on once a day milking is if you're not pushing high milk production for a high producing dairy cow, and feeding grain, especially high amounts of grain, it's not a problem at all. They'll put more of that energy on their back, and also it aids in higher reproduction. So you lose a little milk, but you gain it back by more calves and just a longer lasting cow. She'll last a lot longer because you're never pushing her to her maximum capacity. And so that's kind of where the payback is, in my opinion. I mean, there's been other dairy farmers and said that, well, you could get a lot more milk and be a lot better off. But it's one of those decisions where we made that you have much better schedule, family time, whether it's, events or anything. We milk them in the morning, and we don't have to milk them real early, but we can milk them early enough that we can do that first and then be done for the day and go on with our other things. So yeah, it's been really good for us. I mean, I wouldn't advise milking cows once a day and shipping your milk off to a conventional co-op. I wouldn't advise that, but it definitely, it does make for a higher if you're just looking at milk production versus feed costs. It doesn't pencil out as well for if you're just looking at milk production. But if you're looking at family, for your lifestyle, for your for the life of the cows, and then the calves and reproduction are just so much better. I wouldn't want to go back.
On the once a day milking, how much milk production are you getting from your cows?
It varies somewhat from season to season, or what part of the season we're in, but we do spring and fall calving. And so kind of in the right before the dry off of each season, it's of course less on average, but
Oh,
we
yes.
typically will get anywhere from 2.5 to 3 gallons a day is kind of what we
Oh, okay.
average on throughout the year. And so it's not a lot. It doesn't sound like a lot to most dairy farmers, but when you're processing and packaging all the milk, that does seem like a lot to get
Oh, yes.
to move if you're doing that. So
How many cows do you all typically milk?
anywhere from about 12 to 25.
Oh, yes.
So right now we're about at 20, just right before the spring calving, and then we'll go up to 25 plus on the spring. For the spring, we try to have most of them fresh in the spring, about 2/3 in the spring and 1/3 in the fall. We can do some storage on our products for the fall, or from the spring, we can hold over the winter, and then we just try to keep the fresh products for the fall, so we don't have to have quite as many cows milking throughout the winter. Less hay, less feed.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So how do you market all your milk?
So we market it all direct to consumer. Everything we produce, we direct market, and it's all sold on the farm. We sell everything. Everybody has to come pick up the milk. It's kind of thanks to the Kansas law is kind of what determines how we sell things. Just because we're all raw, grass-fed raw dairy.
Oh, okay.
And we do all our products are that way as well. And so they allow that here in Kansas, and to process raw milk products and sell it directly, but the purchase has to be made on farm. So that's kind of where we are. We set up our farm kind of to the law, I guess.
Right.
To use what we can do and try to leverage on that.
Do you sell other dairy products besides milk?
Yes, we do. So we process as much as we can with our milk. That really helps on the storage of milk, on fresh raw milk. There's a fairly short shelf life, and so if the customers wait for a while or the weather gets bad, then what do we do with all this milk? And it gets kind of expensive to feed it to the hogs or to the chickens.
Oh, yes.
So we do have ways of using it for other things. So cheese is the main thing we do, other than milk. That's kind of our biggest product. We do cheese, and then we'll do yogurt and butter and cream, kefir, chocolate milk, ice cream. Whatever you can do with milk, we'll make it. It seems like so.
Oh, very good.
We typically have as many different things as possible to leverage that customer coming out to the drive, making that drive. So when they do come out, that we have an array of different products, so they can choose what they want to buy and make it worthwhile when they're here.
Oh, yes. Do you have an idea about how far the average person drives to your dairy to get the products?
The average person, we have there's a big city. The city of Wichita, Kansas, is about 30-45 minutes away, and the bulk of the customers would drive from that area.
Oh, yes.
We have people driving from all over the state coming and stocking up as much as they can at one time. And so probably the furthest we have drive 3 hours. So that's a pretty good drive.
Well, I've tasted raw milk and I've tasted store-bought milk, and raw milk's much better.
Yeah. I never grew up with anything other than that, and
oh, yes.
when I've traveled in the past, gone to a hotel or something and drank some milk, and wow, it's like white water.
Yes. Now, what kind of parlor do you have?
We milk in a double 4, so we have 8 units.
Okay.
And it's a raised stanchion dairy barn where it's just an old parallel where they'll stand right side to side, 4 on the side, and we milk them from behind, and we can milk 8 at a time. So with 19 cows right now, it doesn't take very long to get them all milked. We had built that parlor when we were milking closer to 35 cows back in the day, when we were shipping our milk to different to the co-op. So
oh, yes. And then you do all the processing and bottling of the milk right there on site.
Yep. It's all done. It's all connected together from, the dairy barn is connected to the processing room, and the processing room is connected to the store. So it's from where it leaves the cow, it's less than 50 feet to where it reaches the store almost. So it's, doesn't travel like a dairy product would.
Oh, yes, yes. Now, when the cows are in the parlor, do you feed them while they're in the parlor?
We don't. No, we do not. We would do that back in the day, but
Right.
before we even started our once a day milking, we were mixing like the big TMR wagon mixer where we put in the grain and the hay and the silage. This was before we were grass fed and everything, and so
Oh, yes.
we just mixed that all together, and we'd feed that after we had them in the milk barn, and they knew they'd have their fresh feed right after they get out. And so they knew that we want to get through this barn so we can get back there to the feed.
Oh, yes.
So we still do that through the winter. We just don't use any grain for the winter. We'll do hay, and then we also do the sprouted fodder. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh, okay. I am not.
Okay. Well, fodder is a sprouted barley, the grain barley. So it's a seed when we start growing it, and it sprouts. It's more or less like your alfalfa sprouts you put on your sandwich or your taco, whatever. But
Oh, yes.
this is for the cows, and it grows for 8 days on a tray that's watered every 4 hours, and this just is a boost of energy and protein for them, through the winter to get them to keep producing without, grain or other things. So you have that seed that sprouts, and it turns into a sugar, and the starch turns into a sugar, and now it's a plant where they can easily digest it. And so they really love that. It has the green growth on it, and we mix that in with the hay, and there's a lot of juices coming out of that
Oh, yes.
mix in with the hay, and yeah, they do really well on that.
And that's something you do during the winter months?
Yeah, that's just through the colder parts of the year when the paddocks
Oh, yes.
are dormant. Yep.
And when the paddocks are growing, are they getting anything other than the grass?
Occasionally, we'll use some hay just for balancing. So, on a dairy cow, you want to try to balance it out as much as possible. In the spring, you'll have the fresh new growth. And as I've moved away more from annuals, I've had less of those problems. You can have the bloat from some of the species that are very
Oh, yes.
lush and tender, and they just go out there and eat too much of that. And so it also affects their body condition, and it also affects the milk. It can become very strong flavored milk, and which isn't a negative, but a lot of people will comment on it that it has an off flavor if they have it. So we'll use grass hay for that time, mix in a little of that just to balance things out. And then later on in the fall, if the paddocks are getting kind of woody or plenty mature, then we might start supplementing a little bit with alfalfa hay to give them some proteins.
Oh, yes.
That's kind of what we do otherwise than just straight grass. We
Oh, yes.
use the haying operation, the haying for balancing some of our dairy needs. So
Yes, that makes sense.
yeah.
On your pastures, you're milking once a day. Are they moved to a new pasture each milking, or how often do you change paddocks with them?
Yeah, they're once a day that we move them, and that's even through the winter. We'll unroll round bales. In the winter, they'll go out there and fence line. They'll feed along the fence line, and that gets moved every day. Yeah, it's just a small area, but it does give them a new place to lie down and things like that. And so the way our paddocks are set up, it's very easy to give them any amount they need. It's more or less a strip grazing system where we can just move them as far as we want.
Oh, yes. Lloyd, the part with the cows and your dairies, all very interesting to me. But let's transition just a little to the forages you have in your pasture. Earlier, you'd mentioned when you started down this process about your rainfall. There wasn't enough in your area. What's your annual rainfall total?
Typically it's 30 inches.
Oh, yes.
We're about in the center, and if you look on most satellite maps, we're right on the edge where it turns from green to brown.
Yeah.
And
Do you utilize any irrigation?
we do not. We're between two rivers, and we're on a high area where most of the irrigation is more toward the areas of the river, closer to the rivers. And
Oh, yes.
we do not. We have a good alfalfa grows well here. It doesn't get as wet and humid as some other places where alfalfa doesn't work as well. So alfalfa has always been I think it's a good thing for the pasture dairy, just because it's a great protein for them, and you can also store it in a hay bale for them as well.
Oh, yes.
With the drier climate we have, the disadvantage is less rainfall, but the advantage is you can dry hay easier. You can store it and dry hay.
Oh, yes.
Bale it green, and it's still nice and green. A lot of the hay buyers from other states, are noted to come to Kansas for the Kansas alfalfa, and so that's one thing we have an advantage of. It doesn't work quite as well in a grazing system when it's pure alfalfa, just because it gets too lush and the cows can bloat on it. So you have to be pretty careful when you're grazing straight alfalfa, which I don't tend to grow anything monoculture anymore. I typically will plant a mixture of different things, and that also helps the cows balance things out. So.
Oh, yes. So what kind of mixture are we seeing out in your pastures?
Well, I kind of the base what I start with, and this is all my land here on the farm that I graze for the dairy cattle was all in annual production up to about 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
There was some that was in perennials longer than others, but the last of it was about 5 years ago. And so establishment of a sod is kind of the key. So anything that I can grow that will make a good sod where the cows can go out and there's something growing. And so I've typically been just adding to what grows native, and then just adding. And what's worked very well here is a mixture of cool season grasses, because we do have our native, there's some native grasses, even annual, like crabgrass grows out here, which the cows really like through the summer, and you don't have to plant that. But for the spring and fall, the cool season grasses work very well along with alfalfa. And so my mixture that I will just overseed with a no-till drill is orchard grass, little fescue, some brome grass, and then alfalfa and red clover. And I've been putting some other forbs. I love to put as much out as possible, and some seeds are really expensive, just to experiment with, and so you're constantly tweaking the mix every year. Typically, I'll overseed a paddock or two every fall, and just kind of stair step it out. And then the areas where it's getting close to the overseeding, I'll more use as a sacrifice paddock and feed hay on it, or have the cows or calves on it over winter, and then the following fall I'll plant this mixture into. So another thing I really like is the plantain. There's a tonic plantain, and a lot of the cover crop seed places are using that, and then the chicory is also something that has been working pretty good in my system. They really like that plantain, and it's drought tolerant, and getting some forbs out there is really good for the cows.
Very, very good. On your paddocks, you're moving them once a day. Do you have what kind of infrastructure or fencing do you have for your paddocks?
We just utilize a 1-wire electric fence around all the perimeters, and our land is a half a mile long, so we can have long strips we typically have them about 300 feet wide and 100 yards wide.
Oh, okay.
And then we can put a temporary back fence up, and then the fence in the front is kind of where we adjust how much they get each day. And there's a water line. So between these long strips, there's a lane. There's a walk lane for the cows to go back up to the buildings and out. And then there's a gate every 300 to 500 feet.
Oh, okay.
And where they can get into the paddock or the strip. And then along that lane is a water line as well for them. So we can utilize the water right there, and it just makes it so much easier to move them. The water's there, the feed's there, and the manure stays out there, and that's just
Oh, yes.
Really a good thing when you have cows grazing out there and doing the work for you.
Oh, yes, it is. Now, in addition to the cows, you have some other livestock on your farm.
We do, yes. We have tried a lot of different things, and we've right now we're doing layers, pastured layers. So we have a egg mobile out there with several hundred layers, and then we have the pigs. The pigs we mostly just utilize for deep bedding. In deep bedding, so most of those are in around the farm at this point. So we have the pigs, and so the pigs utilize a lot of the byproduct from the dairy processing. So that's a good fit to have pigs. And we did pastured broilers for a while, and so now we have contracted that out to another farm who just produces them, and we sell them here at the farm store.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and then we do it's kind of a small project, but it's something that I've always enjoyed from being a boy up until now, was the rabbits. We do some pastured rabbits as well, and I always enjoy that. We don't actually have the mothers here. We have another farm who just has the breeding stock, and we just buy the weanlings off of them, and then have them on pasture, and then we actually do those. We process those here on the farm. So
on the rabbits, are you using a rabbit tractor? How do you have those on pasture?
Yeah, those are small enough scale where we can have those closer to the house, and we have those just under our fruit trees, around the fruit trees. Our orchard we have. We just move them around there, and they're a smaller rabbit tractor where we can actually pull them, without hooking a piece of machinery onto, and they tend to need a bottom on the tractor. So a bigger pen is a little more challenging to have, a bottom where they don't dig out, and so broiler you can keep in without that, but rabbits will find their way out and become neighbor's dog food or something. So,
oh yes. How's the market for the rabbits? Are you all selling them through your store?
Yes, we do those through our store, and they're rare enough as far as the availability of rabbits is rare enough that people seek us out for that specifically. It's not a big market, but it's big enough that it's worth
Right.
doing, and because of the niche part of it, it's a good return even on a small scale. So
Oh, yes.
a nice thing about rabbits is you don't need as near the amount of input costs on feed like you do on chickens or broilers, and so
Oh,
that's really good on pasture side of things.
I find the pasture rabbits intriguing.
Mm.
I I did have rabbits, but I hadn't tried any rabbit tractors yet. So
Yeah,
maybe in the future I'll try that.
they're a lot of fun. I really like them. Just to watch them graze down that rectangle area that you have them, and then you just a whole bunch of litter after you move them. We move those every day as well, and all that fertilizer going in for the fruit
Oh,
trees. And,
yes.
yeah.
On your eggmobile, are you moving it through your pastures where your cows graze?
Yeah. So through the summer, it moves more along with the cows, and through the winter, we've been just keeping it. We move it every day, but it's on a smaller area. This winter, we actually put up a net around them because we always have the predator issue in the winter much more than through the summer. So
Oh,
through the
yes.
summer, typically we can get by of moving them with the cows, and the cows move far enough each day that predators aren't really going after them. But through the winter,
Oh,
we've got a lot more overhead predators, flying around and looking for a winter snack. So the netting has really helped that, and we do run a guard goose with them as well, so that
oh,
does
yes.
help.
What breed of chickens do you use?
Mostly the Plymouth Rock or the Barred Rock,
Oh, okay.
and then we'll we'll follow up with a flock of Rhode Island Reds, and typically a bigger chicken than your smaller, conventional chicken is better just for predator issues and hardiness as well.
Oh, yes.
But we like to switch around so we know which one are the older ones, and
Oh,
and
yes.
tell which ones we have. So,
That's a good
yeah,
system for you to be able to quickly age them and know who's aging out. That's a
yeah,
very smart
yeah.
way to do that.
Yep.
Lloyd, we came to the time in our podcast where we do our famous 4 questions. They're the same 4 questions we ask of all of our guests. Our first question is, what's your favorite grazing grass related book or resource?
Well, I went to my bookshelf, and the first book that came to my attention was a book on Grass, the Forgiveness of Nature. I
Oh,
bought
yes.
that here years ago, and it's by Charles Walters, and it really helped me understand the role of perennial grasses, and how much more efficient they are than the annual crops we produce, and how they're resilient to nature, and how well the forgiveness part of it t- speaks for itself. So that really helped me understand why our prairies were covered with grass, out here in Kansas, and we do have a lot of the storms, the wind, and the hot and dry, and so grass, was never replanted ever. As a small boy up until now, our native pastures were never reseeded, and they're still going strong. So that really helped me understand why that is.
I don't know that my wife's going to be happy with you because that's a book I'm not familiar with, so I'm going to have to go look it up.
Okay, yeah, it was by Charles Walters, and I remember buying it from Acres USA.
Oh, yes. Well, I will have to look that one up. Our second question, What tool could you not live without on your farm?
Well, there's probably a lot of tools. If the day they break down or not have is the day I'd really be thankful for it. But the first thing that comes to mind is my side by side, my UTV that I use every
Oh, yes.
day, and just man, I just use that so much when you're out, especially on a dairy when you got cows out and you bring them in, take them out, and feed them out there. It just we put so many miles on it, and so they're light. They don't cause compaction, and they got the bed
Oh, yes.
on them. So yeah, I've got a Can-Am Defender is the one I have, and it's really done well for me. I use it to roll out bales with a bale and roller, and kids use it to go gather the eggs. And yeah, we've got a lot of fun on it.
Very good. Our third question is, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started this journey? Or another way, what would you tell someone just starting out?
Well, I come from the side of being a conventional farmer and going to a different approach, and so I guess the beginning stages for me were going from volume, the mindset of producing volume, to the mindset of producing quality, and focusing on customers. That was the big thing that I had to learn, that I think so many farmers do that I talk with are just so concerned about, if we do this pasture thing, we won't get as much production, volume will be down, we won't get paid, we'll go bankrupt. And that was the hardest thing for me to overcome, was that idea that how can you make more with less? I mean, that's
Oh,
all
yes.
our education, we've learned as a conventional farmer, is not that. It's for volume and higher production, and supposedly that leads to higher profits, but that didn't hold out for me. So I am
Yes, yes.
here.
Very good. Where can others find out more about you?
We've got a website for the Borntrager Dairy, and that's just our borntragerdairy.com. And like our name has the R in it. Most people will think of our last name as Bontrager and forget the R, and so ours does have the R in it. So borntragerdairy.com is our website, and then we have a Facebook page, Instagram. My wife did a couple of YouTube videos, mostly on the marketing side for customers. But yeah,
Oh, yes.
she's my wife is the marketing expert here. I do the producing, and she does the marketing relations with the customers and keeps up the website and Facebook feed and all that. So she's the expert there. She's what keeps the farm going when she able to sell our products. So yeah, that's website's probably the one of the biggest things. And then our email list is also very strong. She puts out a lot of content on our email list. So
Oh, yes. And this may not be a question for you, and maybe more of a question for her. What kind of content do you put out on your email list?
well, we have taken several marketing courses, and probably the biggest thing we've changed over the years is from trying to sell something to be more relational with our customers, and help them solve their problems. Is kind of the content she's after. So she'll put on a lot of value and a lot of tips, a lot of recipes, a
Oh,
lot of
very good.
more or less answering the questions that customers have when they're talking with her, becoming that solution to the problem they're facing. So
Very good. Loyd, we really appreciate you coming on to the podcast and joining us. We've enjoyed it.
it's been good. It's been good chatting with you, and yeah, It always helps me to talk about it, to realize the reason we do the things we do.
I hope you've enjoyed this conversation we had with Loyd today. I found it super interesting. Like I mentioned earlier in the episode, Dutch belted cows have always been one of my favorites. It's a fascinating breed, and they're so striking to look at with their white belt. And we talked about a couple of things that I wasn't familiar with, like the sprouted fodder. One other thing that I found interesting was the pastured rabbits. So I hope you gained something from it. We do appreciate you listening. Thank you for listening to the Grazing Grass Podcast, helping grass farmers learn from grass farmers. Be sure to share this episode, leave us a review, and subscribe. Hey there, listeners. We appreciate you tuning in and want to continue bringing you the best content we can. But producing a podcast takes a lot of time and effort, so we need your support. You can help us out by joining the Grazing Grass community and becoming a supporter for exclusive content and early releases. Also, you can buy our merch to show your love for the show, or by using our affiliate links to purchase products or services we recommend. If you can't support us financially, please spread the word and tell others about our show. Thank you for your support, and we can't wait to bring you more great conversations from grass farmers like you.